so we're here with Jonny Daniels.
Jonny Daniels is president of From the Depths, a group aimed at teaching future generations lessons of the Holocaust.
How would you characterize yourself as far as what you do?
One say he's a Jewish agent or a member of a Masonic lodge. Another accuse him of controlling the politicians.
I have worn multiple hats, but they all sort of culminate in this role with dealing with Israel advocacy.
All of us need to know where we came from. Knowing our roots and knowing who we are enables us to move forward.
Are you part of the Mossad?
If I told you,
Yeah, you wouldn't be part of the Mossad, you say?
there you go. We'll keep it as a mystery.
The only resolution we're going to see is the absolute end of the terror organization Hamas.
I feel like post-October 7th is when you really blew up to the surface.
The truth is that the media has lied to you. If we were to step out of Gaza right now, October 7th couldn't happen again.
You would think that October 7th is going to create a unification. We have so many enemies around us, and we are this small country that needs to have that sense of pride all together.
We just got 1,200 people killed. How could we turn around right now and have this conversation?
These are the conversations that are happening inside of the cabinet, and there isn't a perfect answer because this is a horrible, horrible situation.
It doesn't make a difference what the hell we're gonna say. We need to put our heads down, handle business, and be done with this in 3 months.
Things take time. If you make mistakes and you rush too quickly, then you put soldiers' lives at risk and also innocent civilians' lives at risk. There's a reason why we've survived as Jews longer than anybody else. True bastions of humanity. Jews don't hate. When you hate, you don't create anything. You destroy.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Mislaibeled. We have an awesome guest this week. Firstly, if you're watching, if you can please like, subscribe, and comment. Working very hard, as always. Okay, so first of all, if you guys are all wondering before we get into things where the hell we are, so I'm moving. So I had to pull apart my entire studio at my house that I had before. I built it a year and change ago, and it was actually extremely depressing, literally just ripping the whole entire thing down. I wish I got another couple years out of it, but we're moving and rebuilding the entire thing. It should look, I think, pretty much the same. The space that we were building out to put it in again. But for the meantime, if we're not on the road and I'm here on Long Island, which our guest was very excited to come to.
So excited. So excited.
Then we are going to be in my office. So this actually works for the time being. Okay, so we're here with Jonny Daniels.
Yes, sir.
Jonny, I have a lot of questions about you. First of all, I was told that you're somebody that knows everyone. So, but I got to understand, right, Shmueli? I was telling Shmueli, I'm like,
How that works.
first of all, how was your trip in here?
To here.
I'm saying you were in the city, right?
I was in the city. Getting here was an absolute nightmare.
Okay.
It was an absolute nightmare. It took me a couple of hours.
Right.
Traffic, Uber driver who thought he'd beat Waze. He was getting on my nerves. But we got here in the end, and we're here.
There happens to be nothing more frustrating than an Uber driver that's a moron.
Yeah.
No?
Do you know what? Because I could see the Waze, and I could see him saying, it's going to be quicker to go the other way. And I'm like, bud, it's not going to be quicker going the other way. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, go according to Waze. And he didn't. And whatever, we're here.
Yeah,
Also,
We're
you're
here.
watching them do it on the Uber app. You're seeing them, and then you like do it on your own phone, and you're
And
like,
it's much quicker your own way.
you're like, if I just told the guy to freaking go that way, he would go that way. But they won't listen.
Yeah.
Ugh.
We have a whole argument as it is Google Maps or Waze, but that's
That's a whole different argument. But wait, why are you in the city? That's
Right.
Well, I was in the city. Well, I'm here in the States. I'm on a bit of a speaking tour at the moment.
Okay.
And I was in the city today. We were at the Nova exhibition. It's the last couple of days. I was there with Elon Gold and a group of other people, really to have a chance to see it. And I'll be honest with you, I walked through the entire exhibition in about a minute. I entered, saw the video, and just couldn't see anymore. I don't like it. It's hard for me. Really have a hard time with that stuff. And it's funny because I do deal with this for a living.
Yeah.
Right. I deal with Holocaust survivors. I'm dealing with all this stuff all the time. But to see it is pretty difficult. I definitely recommend people should see it. I've been to Nova, the actual site. I've met with survivors from Nova. I met with families of people who were killed at Nova. But to see it like that was very triggering and difficult, but incredibly important as well.
Yeah, picture's worth 1,000 words.
What are I've never been to it personally. What are like the things that are there? Like they have like just artifacts like bloodied clothing, things of that nature.
Well, there are artifacts like the lost and found, right? So there were tons and tons of shoes and bags and items of people who just never came back to pick it up, who either killed or ran or whatever it was. And then you have video footage from the day, from the Hamas terrorists, from people's cell phones. It's done exceptionally well. It truly is a masterpiece of an exhibition and incredibly important. And in all honesty, again, it's the kind of thing that I was like, I'm not sure I need to see it, but after seeing those idiot protesters there
Yeah.
last week. That was
That's why he extended it a
that's
week.
why Scooter extended
Scooter
it.
was the one who built this?
He built it with a group of people. A group of donors came on board, and then literally, I heard today that during the exhibition, it was meant to end last week. There was the huge protest, and Scooter was like, "No, we're doing more."
Right.
And his people were like, "Okay, well, great. Another week's an extra $500,000, right? It's a big place and downtown security is off the charts. Like the amount of security
has to
outside,
be.
crazy.
$500,000, that's not a lot of money in my opinion.
for 1 week.
I would think it would be even more.
35
Wall Street, you're renting out a spot, security. I mean,
the security was crazy. I mean, and again, like, but this is kind of where we fall today, right? With this craziness of the fact that we're even in a position where you've got to guard an exhibition of dead Jews.
yeah,
right?
no, I mean, they did I don't know if you know, Shmueli, they did a whole protest basically outside like a week ago.
I know, and they extended the
it.
the exhibition.
Scooter, actually, I mean, it's interesting how he's played this whole post October 7th because he's finding himself in an interesting. I think he's actually done it masterfully well, personally. Very like he's stood by like his values, but he's been unique about it, and it's actually pretty impressive. Whatever, I don't want to get into all the thoughts on that, but him putting this thing together, I mean, it was very, very. It was powerful.
It is incredibly powerful, and you could see the people there going through incredibly moved. The lines outside were massive. It was beautiful to see, and inside was absolutely packed. And again, it was done really, really well. I mean, I've been.
Are there other things? Sorry, are there other things outside of just Nova? Like footage there is, I assume, also other things from October 7th.
It was mainly Nova. I mean,
Really?
look, Nova in itself was a massively big part of October 7th, right? Because you had this mass entrance of terrorists on there, right? October 7th was way more. It was crazier than any of us even really begin to imagine, right? We're dealing with the fact of 3,500 terrorists rushing a border. They entered Israel in over 20 places, right?
Right.
And so, getting as far as Ofakim, which is 24 kilometers away from Gaza, this is far. These places,
very far, yeah.
very, very
They're well
far.
into Israel.
Right. And this also, by the way, explains, and I often talk about this when I give my public lectures, this explains also the importance of things like Judea and Samaria, what people mistakenly sometimes call the West Bank. Right. 24 kilometers from the West Bank, right, isn't Ofakim with 5,000 people. It's half of Israel. It's 3 million people living in that area.
Right.
So,
Can we just go back to one thing? How would you characterize yourself as far as what you do? Like for the people watching here, like you've been in a lot of different sectors. Obviously, you've been involved in, semi-involved in politics.
Yep.
You've put together, you've been a very outspoken person for, Holocaust awareness. What specifically, when someone asks you, like, what do you do? Are you a PR expert? What's your...
That's a good question. Look, I don't really classify myself as anything, to be honest. I think that the way I look at it is more than anything, it's attempting to really push and understand who we are as a people and a level of Jewish pride within not just myself and my family, but a broader audience as well. And that, for me, really is the key and the most crucial thing that any of us could be and should be doing today. Is, beyond anyone else, we need to stand tall and proud ourselves. And I think I push towards that. My foundation obviously works with Holocaust education. I've been doing that for 10 years. Prior to that, I worked in the Knesset. I worked in the Israeli parliament, working with multiple parliamentarians. Prior to that, I was in the Israeli army. For 3 years, I was a staff sergeant in the paratroopers. So I have worn multiple hats, but they all sort of culminate in this role, I suppose, today with dealing with Israel advocacy.
And is the Israel advocacy, are you more targeted towards showing non-Jews like really what we're about, who we are, what we stand for, and really, I guess, shooting down all the false, obviously debunking all the crap that's out there? Or is it more unifying like the Jewish front of people that, you have people on the reform side, conservative side, and different things, and getting them to understand exactly as Jews, like especially ones that, that are voting for different things, and you're like, well, why, like we have these people, why are you voting for that person? Why are you not? Like
precisely the leftists that...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and look, there's...
Like, which one are you more focused on?
Both is the honest answer. Look, on one hand, if we look at the non-Jewish audience, it's really as important. It's crucial right now that we explain and tell our story, because if we don't tell our story, no one else is going to tell it for us, right? We have to continue telling our story and make sure people understand. But within the Jewish community, people often ask that question as, what about preaching to the choir, right? As the saying goes, the truth is this choir does need to be preached to.
100%.
The Jewish community needs to constantly be reminded that we are in the right, that we do have the most moral army in the world, that we are safer today than we ever have been, and that everything is going to be okay. And so this continual push of this message is crucial on both avenues.
Can I ask you a question? One thing. I've heard people say, again, I always tell people that if anyone thinks that they actually know what's going on because of news articles, you're kidding yourself. We probably know maybe 10%. What's happening behind closed doors is a whole different discussion.
Yep.
In my own life at this point, thank God I'm able to experience that with this podcast. People are like, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Or telling me, like in the comments, you should do this, you should do that. Obviously, they don't understand what's happening.
Right.
But my question would be, do you think that you hear people say Israel's too focused on the PR war and trying to convince people? Like, look, these people aren't, there's a large convention of call it anti-Semitism, because that's what it is, really. Even though I hate just throwing that word out, but there's a large percentage. It doesn't make a difference what the hell we're going to say. Okay, we need to put our heads down. We can put out all the PR in the freaking world. We can take over TikTok. They're not changing their mind just because, we push forward our narrative and try to prove to people that we're correct. So why are we trying to do that? Screw all these people. Like, let's just handle business and be done with this in 3 months versus playing the PR war as we go. And
Right. So that, again, like all of your questions, there's many layers to your questions, right? So the first layer, in terms of just getting on with it, we are just getting on with it, right? There isn't any question of that. Things take time, right? The Second World War took 45 months, right? America spent billions of dollars in 10 years hunting down Osama bin Laden. Things take time.
Right.
A war in Gaza also takes time, because if you make mistakes and you rush too quickly, then you do put soldiers' lives at risk and also innocent civilians' lives at risk. So we have to be surgical and careful in terms of how we deal with this war. Rafah is a good example, right? People say, well, why did you wait so long? Many reasons behind that. The first reason is Arab countries coming up to Ramadan. This was, all the Arab countries, and Israel has incredible relationships with a lot of Arab countries. Saudi Arabia is a perfect example, right? The Biden administration now, they've kind of stopped talking about it because they realized it just wasn't going to happen, this push for normalization. Nonsense.
he wants it on his record. Obviously.
Absolutely, because he needs some kind of Abraham Accord saying it was never going to happen.
But wasn't it about to happen, and that's why Hamas people...
So it's one of the reasons. This was documentation that was found inside of Gaza, showed that this push towards normalization with Saudi Arabia was one of the reasons behind October 7th. These were documents, minutes from meetings with Sinwar. This was actually partially true. But even that, in terms of normalization with Saudi Arabia, it actually doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference, right? Not now. The potential change of administration here in the United States will make a massive difference to that deal. Massive difference to that deal. So Israel has to wait that through. And also it's a question of what we're willing to give up to get that deal. If we put that to the side and we look at this issue of anti-Semitism and media and the fact that people are going to be somewhat rooted against us regardless of what we do, it's true. There isn't any question of that. People will often then follow that question up with, look at social media today and how bad it is and how it's just fueling anti-Semitism with young people. We can see what that does, right? 85 years ago, before the Holocaust, there wasn't TikTok, right? There wasn't social media, and people still hated us. Right.
It
was taught a different way. Right. It's always going to be there. We, again, need to stand tall and proud as Jewish people and just push against that. Israel does need to work on PR, and we do need to do more because, again, we have to continuously tell our story. But we also have to understand that we're not going to win it every time.
I just want to get his quick background.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I just want to get your quick, for the people watching, you're involved in politics. We're talking politics. Mm-hmm. You are informed. Can you just give your basic political background? And
so I was I started as the chief of staff to a guy called Danny Danon, who then became Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. And will again become Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, most likely in the next couple of months. And then I worked for different members within the Likud party. I worked on Prime Minister Netanyahu's campaign in 2004, I believe.
Oof. How did you get involved? Like at the beginning, how did you get involved in all of this?
How did I get involved in politics? I was just out of the army. I was newly married. I had a kid. I was studying at Bar Ilan, and a guy made Aliyah, a friend of mine from England, and he was talking to me in university and said, there's a member of Knesset who's looking for a driver. And I said, I know how to drive. I could do some extra money. I'm married. I got a kid. Why not? It turns out I didn't drive so well, but I was pretty good at politics. So within like a month of being his driver, I was his chief of staff. So that's how I got into politics. I just grind and worked hard. Ended up pulling out of studies because my work hours were like 15 hours a day, right? When you're working with a politician, you're with them the whole time. It's nuts. And then I kind of grew within the political background.
Was it just like natural, organic, like conversations in the car, and he just noticed, he's like, this guy just knows what he's talking about. He's someone that can be of value, and then
And trust, right?
And trust, and I can trust this guy, and then just from there, that relationship within 1 month just boom. He's
Basically, I mean that's pretty much how it works.
That seems like that's a lot to put trust in someone, the chief of staff.
Right. I mean, again, look, the terminology sounds better than it actually is. Right. In Israel, like everyone's a chief of staff.
Everyone's a lieutenant in the army.
Well, you know what it is. It's like
everyone's a sergeant.
Well, what I do with because Danny Danon at the time, he was the deputy speaker of the Knesset, right? Knesset obviously being Israel's parliament. Sounds like a big deal, right? What people didn't realize at the time and still don't realize is there's about 12 deputy speakers of the Knesset. Right. Every party has a deputy speaker. But when you're introducing the deputy speaker, wow. Right?
Yeah.
So everything's about marketing and how you pitch it.
It's like everyone's an ambassador for everything. It's I'm an ambassador for this organization. There's like 18 ambassadors for those organizations.
What difference, right? It's just about how you pitch it and spin it. And so we were successful in doing so. And a lot of the work that I did with Danny was also then based on his relationships here in the United States and helping him build that. And as a result of such, I ended up meeting a lot of very interesting people, all the way from, high-level politicians to businessmen, such as, a guy called Donald Trump, who I think you've heard of.
Sure.
Yeah, so I met him for the first time about 11 years ago. That was pretty interesting.
What was that like?
It was interesting. I mean, it must be 11, 12 years ago the first time I met him.
What part is interesting?
He's just saying before he was running, before he was even like a part of like the...
I was literally in the room with a guy called Sam Nunberg and Roger Stone, who are the people who really masterminded his campaign. I was with them and like having conversations at which point does he pull out of the political run so he can carry on with The Apprentice.
This is like 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
What do you mean? He was in politics then? No.
When he started the run,
2015 this was?
When Trump said he was going to run was
2016.
2016 was the actual election, but he started 2014, 15, end of 2014, 2015
is when he said he's starting to run.
It's 10 years ago, but either way, yes, I'm with you.
It's a bit longer than that. Is when he said he was going to start to run. I mean, I was there, like, I was witness to a lot of interesting things from behind the scenes. What was interesting about Trump?
I'm asking, like, what could be interesting about meeting a guy just in a room? Like,
he first of all, he was a very interesting... I'm obviously using him as an example, right, because of who he is today and what's going on now. He was fascinating. He was a very interesting person. All the way from, I mean, I must have been, I think, 26 or 27 at the time. I'm 38 today. And he'd sit opposite me and he'd ask me questions, right? So he'd say, like, tell me about Iran and the intrifuges and all of this bombs and stuff that's going on, right? And so I'd explain it to him briefly. His attention span was nothing, but he'd listen and then he'd shoot the next question at me and I'd answer. And he'd say things like, I like you. You're a smart kid. You're going to go far. Good for you. And, that's a nice thing to hear from someone at that level. And he was like, a huge figure. Yeah. He was a big deal back then. It's a big deal today, right? But then he was a huge, celebrity and businessman. And he was just gracious and nice and decent to me. And every single time I saw him.
Yeah, it's so funny because it seems like
everyone says the same.
It seems like that's the way he operates. It's like he's not the guy that's going to understand every last thing that's going about in the war. Like, for example, like I feel like Bibi, or like in that situation with Gaza and everything, like he knows in a certain way what's happening with the operations. He's there, like he's in the war room.
There's more depth in the specifics.
Trump's like in the war room. He's just like, hey, tell me exactly what you're going to do in like 5 seconds. Okay, that sounds normal. Like he has a good like intuition on this situation.
It very much feels like everything's intuition, right? And it's like there's no blah blah with him, right? So it's like, tell me about Iran intrifuges, explain it now, right? Don't go into a whole schlep and a story, and it's like sound bites. This is how he operates, and for better or for worse, that's who he is, right?
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit. You grew up in England, right?
Yeah, London, England. Made Aliyah 18.
So you
did make Aliyah.
Yeah, when I was 18 years old, I went and I pretended to be in yeshiva for a year.
Which yeshiva?
I've heard this already from a few people from London. This is your number 2, at least.
Yeah. London guys love going into these. Yeah, they love going into these yeshivas. They pretend they're there for like a little bit, then they fech around.
Well, to be honest with you, I had an interesting time. I was, all the Roshei Yeshiva come to London. Yeah. And so you have this like faher with everybody, right? So I was sitting down with everybody, right? From left to right, for white yarmulkes, black yarmulkes.
How did you grow up in England?
I grew up like modern? Like very modern. And Bnei Akiva, all of that stuff. And I sat down with everybody. And the person who really got me immediately was an incredible man called Rabbi Yomin Moshkovitz. Rabbi Yomin Moshkovitz is Rosh Yeshiva from Medrash Shmuel. It's a Haredi yeshiva.
Sure. And so, of course you know Medrash.
Yeah, so of course you know Medrash. Yes.
Medrash is the place, by the way. Medrash is the place where the people go that like, I don't really know where I'm going, but like I want to deal with my friends and don't want to have too much supervision and like we'll see.
No, but
what
it's more than
happens.
that. You know, I sat down with him before yeshiva, and he said to me, he said, "Listen," he said, "you know, if you're not in 3 sedarim, if you're not studying, you're not learning 3 times a day, in my yeshiva, you're out." And they're pretty strict. He said, if you're studying more than 2 a day, you're out. Right? You have to go at least once a day and do something. Right? Like do volunteering. I've always been volunteering. I've always been working with different organizations, like from a young age. And so that's why I started working with an organization called Zichron Menachem, which is an incredible organization that works with children with cancer. And so I kind of did a little bit of yeshiva, not too much, a lot of volunteering, and Ben Yehuda was quite a fun place to go. In the evenings.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed myself. And then after that, I from a young age though, Israel was home for me. Like I've always felt it.
I've heard a lot of this story, and not to like harp on the Manager Shmuel, but I have friends that have been there. Very similar stories. I have a friend there who actually made Aliyah. Bensi made Aliyah. He went to Midrash Shmuel. Very similar story. Like he learned for a little bit and he did his own thing, and then eventually you fizzle out. You do your own thing, and you find your way around the country, and you start like really enjoying the culture on a really high level and finding that Jewish pride, and then it's
because I think
over.
the thing with Rabbi Yomin more than anything is look, he's a huge Talmud Chacham. There's no question of that, and obviously learning for him is incredibly important. But I think he also understands, you know, that there's a spark in different people in different ways, right? So even to the point where, you know, I left Medrash and I went and signed up for the army, right, which is not a usual move, and I went back on Rosh Hashanah, and you know, he schlepped me up and stood me next to him davening. Right, like I stood there basically in uniform, right, which is a strong move in a Haredi yeshiva. But he appreciated who I was and the path that I was taking in life, and I appreciate
in this
him for
path. Did you have a particular career path you thought you were going to go on originally? Or you had like just no idea. You went to Bar Ilan, to undergrad.
I was in Bar Ilan for 6 months. I ended up leaving because
but I'm
of
saying
that.
you didn't have something specific you had in mind originally.
Look, I always believed in, first of all, giving back and giving to the community, and I like to flow in life. You know, there's the saying that man plans and God laughs. Right. And I always felt that. And I always felt like there'd be some kind of direction that would find itself for me. And still, I'm in this flow. If you ask me what I'm going to be doing in 5 years' time, I don't know what to answer you. Right? I don't have an answer. I'll wait and see. But I'll enjoy the journey.
You go with the experiences as they come.
Absolutely. And, you know, and when you experience life like that, Baruch Hashem, it's a beautiful thing. You know, I've got 2 incredible daughters. I got married as soon as I got out of Bar Ilan. Before even I got in Bar Ilan, as soon as I got out of the army, I got married. I was 21, 22 years old.
Wow.
I got married. I had a kid almost straight away. So my eldest daughter, Michal, is almost 15 now.
Wow.
So I'm 38. I got a 15-year-old, which is amazing. My second daughter's 11. And got divorced. Kept the daughters. They stayed with me as well. And thank God, like, you know, life is good and I'm very happy and I'm able to travel the world and do wonderful things.
All right, everybody, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, CubX. CubX is an IT company that personally does my own IT. I've recommended these guys to multiple of my friends. They have come back with nothing but rave reviews. These guys have fantastic customer service. There are no hold times. You call, you get through, they fix your problem immediately, and they are truly a group of talented IT professionals. They service specifically companies of 5 employees or more. They have a special division for companies with 500 employees or more, and a additional division specifically dedicated to the healthcare field, which is an area that they particularly specialize in. If you'd like to get through to them, you can reach them at 732-444-8771. Press 2 to get through to the sales department. You can also email them at hello@cubx.com. That's hello@cubx.com. You can also check them up online at cubx.com. Again, that's cubx.com. If you're a new company that's starting out and need a great IT team, definitely reach out to these guys. Or if you're an existing company that is currently not happy with your existing IT firm, I would highly recommend this group. Thank you so much, guys. Back to the episode. Why did you go to the IDF right after, right out of Shiva?
I always, that was one thing that when you asked me what I knew I wanted to do, that was always one thing that I very much felt like. And especially after spending time in Israel and working with Israelis and being around them, it felt like, you know, their blood is no redder than mine, right? How, you know, I love Israel just as much as they do. I believe in the Jewish homeland just as much as they do. How can they go and risk their lives and put themselves on the front line and fight, and I not? And so that's really the main reason I decided to sign up.
So I assume you're someone who when it comes to like the whole bill in Israel and the whole fight between the Haredim learning and that whole thing, right? It's always a point of contention. I assume you're someone that believes that everyone should be fighting, or
no, I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so. Look, it's a tricky one and a difficult one. There's also, it has to be done in a way in which there's understanding, right? You're not gonna look. It's enough even here when you look at the Haredi, like ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community, right? Try and get them to do anything they don't want to do. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's simply not going to happen, right? It's enough to go to places like Monty, speaking Yiddish, right? These people, they live a different life to
It's like a
to us.
cocoon.
It completely. And so, I remember the first time, like, I met people from here who, like, Yiddish was their first language and their English was poor. I'm like, where did you grow up? Like Monty. I'm like, what? I'm like, they've never been to Manhattan,
Right?
They live they live in their own planet, which is fine and okay. But if you want these people to integrate into society, we have to enable them to do so in a way that is comfortable for them and decent for them as well.
Right.
Because you're not going to take a whole group of people who have kept their religiosity and their religious life in a specific way for hundreds of years and suddenly change that.
Right, so it's just going to cause friction if you're going to try to.
There also
And
has-
it just won't work. It just simply
it's just
won't
a fight.
work.
Like you're not going to get them to agree, and
So it's
that's it.
pointless. There are more Haredim who are going to the army.
Right.
It does slowly happen. The same with the more Haredim who are going into the workplace in Israel, right? Because learning isn't for everybody. We all know this. To say that it is for everybody is also a lie.
Right.
So there's a middle ground here that has to be found in a way that is decent and fair. The problem in Israel, like everywhere, is the politicization of everything.
Polarization also.
And the polarization,
Yeah.
and it's political more than anything, right? It's people on the left. Oh, they should all go. The people, the Haredim, like, well, you say that we're not going at all, right? So there does need to be a middle ground.
There's
and
no level of
understanding.
understanding really, and then incentivization. Like people don't realize, is what I'm hearing, is that in general, when you're trying to get someone to do something that's out of their comfort zone, I think this is a basic just thing in general in life.
Right, that's
is you have to let down their guard and you have to understand them and you have to say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. And then number two, after that, incentivize. Why is this good for you? Instead of just berating them and telling them,
can't create such strong confrontation.
You can't just say what you're doing is wrong.
Like you
this
said,
is the right way.
It doesn't work with anything in life.
Right.
The only way that will work in the army and in an army setting is, the army, and it would cost the army too much money. In all fairness, like people talk about this all the time,
There's
but
a lot of BS also to it. You're saying it's not even like it would happen. You're saying even if they all agreed.
if every Haredi decided to join the army today,
Yeah.
the army is going to collapse. Like, it's what the hell are they going to? Suddenly, everyone's got glut kosher food, right? Like, no, but not just
Right.
glut kosher.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you got Rav Landa from Bnei Brak, and he won't eat that one, and this one won't eat that one, right? And he
Right.
can't look at a woman, and how's he going to
Right,
fight?
right. He can't fight in this brigade because this brigade. He
Right,
can't
exactly,
do this, he
and
can't do
this,
that.
and then you got the Satmars who won't go to the same room as the Vishnitz, and then it's like
This guy has to go to the mikveh while this guy's fighting in the Golan. Like
exactly. So you're going to create a whole level of complication
Right.
that is way more than people realize.
Right.
That's the
and even
proof to
think
the
about
polarization. It's like
because it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Again, Haredim. Look, if you're going to live in a country like Israel, that is a very difficult place to live. There's no question of that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody should play their part somehow,
Right.
So if there is kind of a national service where they could go into schools and teach or whatever,
else, yeah.
let them do that. There does need to be a way figured around this eventually because it does cause friction. But the flip side of this as well is that there's a whole section of people in Israel, right? And especially on the far left in Israel, who don't just not like religious people, but they hate them, right? And we can't ignore this either. When you look at what happened in Tel Aviv,
go
right, with all the issues of like public prayers and all of this stuff. I live in Tel Aviv, right? It was like it's hatred 101.
what happened? Describe exactly.
So basically, it was
Yom
even
Kippur
like
you're talking about?
it was Yom Kippur, like last year prior to October 7th, when people started davening and they put up a mechitza, right? And the separation between men and women, and they came to push it down, and the city wouldn't allow them to do it. And I was there when was it? Simchas Torah last year with my daughters. I live really in the center of Tel Aviv, so we're in the center of the city. And, there's a few religious shuls around and people were dancing and they had like mechitzas up and some people come and try and pull them down.
Isn't there someone that like eating pork? Like I remember there was just like
a lot of nonsense like that of eating pork or eating on Yom Kippur in front
Right,
of people
in public,
to like in
I remember.
public. And it's just...
like a tease almost.
yeah, just to
Never. Like,
just to be
honestly,
jerks.
if this kind of thing happened here, we'd all be screaming anti-Semitism, right?
Well, no, but it was Jewish.
But it was
But
Jewish
this is the
people.
point,
That's-
right? Like it's,
They say that is honestly the worst form of anti-Semitism is the self-hatred.
Unfortunately, as we can see now very clearly, there's a lot of stupid Jews as well, right? Where we're not. Unfortunately, there are plenty of us who don't always behave the way we should, and so there is this kind of clash of cultures to a degree. However, that community in Israel, that far left, very, very secular, very anti-religious community is a community that's dying out.
I was also going to ask, what percentage is it? It's like, it's like in America, you have the
Progressive
far right,
left,
or
or
the
the
progressive left.
alt-right, yeah.
That's the question. What the progressive left always says, well, no, the right is the dangerous part, and the real answer is no. Everyone agrees the right is fucked up.
Right.
The left, though, it's taken seriously. That's the difference. So,
And this is from
what fringe is it? What percentage?
Well, this is interesting, right? Because and this also leads into all of what we're seeing in Israel now today, right? When we're seeing the cases with the courts, and you're seeing the cases against Netanyahu, and all of these things, it kind of falls down. And this part's going to get me into a lot of trouble because obviously people will disagree with me and not like it.
I like this. People disagree with me.
Yeah. So look, effectively, what it is in Israel is, in America, people will talk about the deep state, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In Israel, we call it the deep shtetl. Now, effectively, Israel was created initially, and the initial people who started Israel was Ben Gurion and all of these incredible people. It was very much a socialist society, right? With the kibbutzim and this whole star.
Right.
And the Sephardic Jews who came in, who tended to be a lot more traditional than your sort of German, Polish Jew who had come there with his suits and cufflinks and ties, right? Not really ready and adapt for the weather. They were the ones who started Israel, were these people. Then the Sephardic Jews come in. Now, the Sephardic Jews come into Israel in mass numbers, escaping Arab countries, and stick to their traditions a lot more than Ashkenazi Jews. A lot more.
Yes.
So the vast majority of this kind of secularized left in Israel is Ashkenazi Jews. The center right in Israel is much more the Sephardic Jews. So we saw this even way back when Menachem Begin got first elected. He got elected based on the platform of the Sephardic Jews stood with him and said, enough, like we're not second-class citizens anymore. And so what you have in Israel today is this kind of center right of again, I'm obviously generalizing like crazy, but Sephardic Jews. Add to that, Haredi Jews, right? 1 in 4 of every kindergarten kids in Israel wears a yarmulke today. That's a big number.
That is?
Yeah.
I was going to say
3 out of 4 do not?
Yeah, correct. Sorry. 3 out of 4 wear a yarmulke. I meant 3 out of 4 wear a yarmulke today.
75% wear a yarmulke.
75% wear a yarmulke today. And these are big numbers.
That's
in comparison.
That's a big number.
These are big numbers. And so
I would have expected 2.5 out of every.
Yeah, I would expect like 50%. Yeah.
But think about it, right? You go to a place like Bnei Brak or Yerushalayim, right? Where you got from families and they're popping out, 10, 11, 12 kids. A secular family living in Tel Aviv in their 2-bedroom apartment, will have two kids and a dog. Right. So it's like they're overtaking. So Israel's really shifting. And we're seeing this shift when it comes down to things like the courts.
Someone was just, who was telling us this? Jason was telling us this with in America, how people of color have much more kids than whites. Like regular white families are having 2-3 kids. He's like, every one of these, like, Mexican and blacks, like there's 15 in a household in an apartment. Like there's just so many more of them. Like the census is so off. Right. Because there's so many in every, it's the same idea.
Do you think that causes even more strain, meaning the left and the non-religious sect of Jews in Israel, they see that there's 3 out of 4 yarmulke wearing people, and like that these people are just popping out, and there's a sense of scared. They're fighting for their life.
They're incredibly fearful because Israel's changing, right? And it changes from what they're used to, right? They're used to this very secularized version of Israel. Right. They're used to this version of Israel where, the courts are set up with a friend who brings a friend. Even the army, right, was very much that kind of situation, right? Where it's run by a particular group and continues to be run by a particular group. The head of the Mossad, it was always the same thing. The Shabak, it was always the same thing. And so what happens is that when this starts changing, the people who are connected to that power start getting nervous. Right, and this happens everywhere. Right, and things do change. That's just the way.
What's the
work.
deep state or deep shtetl concept in Israel?
The concept of it more is connected to this kind of secularized far left, which you very much see through the media in Israel. And the main media channels in Israel are going to be run effectively by this secularized far left in Israel.
Sounds like America.
Basically,
so they're saying
so if you were to watch, for example. Since October 7th, you watch any of these secularized channels, which are the major channels in Israel, it's like there will not be a news show without somehow Netanyahu being at fault. Right, being at fault. Now, again, it's not to say he's not entirely at fault. Right. It's not to say
he's
that
not entirely at fault.
Right. But it's not like everything's his fault. Right. Like, and a perfect example Now, this happened maybe a year and a half ago. I was sitting at home watching the news with my daughters, and my youngest was 9 at the time. And they had an item on the news where Ben-Gvir, who was the Minister of Interior, had decided that they're going to stop the baking of fresh pita bread in prisons. Okay. So in prisons in Israel, you had pita ovens where they were baking fresh pitas every day. So the inmates, these terrorists, were eating fresh pita breads.
Right.
So he turned around and said, "No, what the fuck? You ain't eating fresh pita breads, right? We'll bring them in frozen. You can have some crappy
We have
ones."
people that don't have fresh pita breads.
Like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Right. So he pushed forward with that directive, and the news that evening was like laughing at him, saying, "Well, it's going to cost like 10 agorot more, like a cent more to actually ship them in, as opposed to giving fresh ones." And my 9-year-old turned around. She was like, "Abba," she was like, "Why on earth are we even giving them pita? Like, what are we doing? Like, how are you?" Yeah. Well, the concept of giving someone fresh pita bread, like prisoners, terrorists who killed Jews, it was so basic and simple. But because of the fact that it was him who did it, the media just had to attack him.
Yeah, it's very similar to what's going on.
And so that is exactly how it works in Israel. And there's always going to be pushback against that. And it is this attempting of grabbing these last strains of power that we're seeing in Israel. And, now when we look at it, you're looking at a very different system today. Right after October 7th, politics in Israel will change drastically. It will.
Just beginning the changes.
It's not even started, to be honest, right? Because you're going to look at the next election. You're going to look at new parties popping up that will take most of the votes from the major significant parties. And it kind of has to be that way. We need a reset in Israel.
Right. You would think that October 7th is going to create a unification when it comes to the next political cycle that is going to be like a revolutionary type of thing. Like you would think that this is going to galvanize in a certain way, the same way September 11th galvanized in America. But at the same time, just outside looking in, and I'm very novice in all this stuff, and a lot of things you're saying, I'm learning honestly for the first time, and I'm sure there are viewers that don't know everything. But with that being said, like there is a sense of like, I feel people that think they know more than like they actually know in Israel, and like because of that they kind of instead of unifying, it's just a lot of people just instead of unifying the country, it ends up becoming just people arguing how the country should move forward, instead of like, don't you see what just happened? Don't you understand that right now we have to unify, that we have so many enemies around us, and we are this small country that needs to have that sense of pride all together right now?
So the truth is that, and this is going to be shocking for you both. The truth is that the media has lied to you, right? That don't fall off your seats, right? When you see these mass protests or these so-called mass protests going on in Israel, they're not as big as the media likes to make them seem.
Post October 7th or the judicial reform?
What kind of both? Crazy. But post, most definitely. You'll see over the last few weeks, especially, you'll see like hundreds of thousands of people getting up and speak and like demonstrating. In vast majority of these people are the same people that were demonstrating prior to October 7th in the judicial reforms.
That's still a nice number.
It sounds like a lot of people.
Well, how many would you think it is?
You're saying it's a loud minority.
There's only 8 million people in Israel.
Right, but okay, and to get a Knesset seat is more, right? One seat per average of 120. Right. All of those people together couldn't even get over the threshold to get into the Knesset. Right. So again, and this, whilst it's 200,000 people with 9.9 million people in Israel, you're still looking at the vast majority of Israelis who are unified.
So let me ask you
this. You do believe that?
Oh, there isn't any question of that. The vast majority of Israelis are unified. There are idiots that are pulled by politicians and media more often than not, who try to pull things in different directions. But the honest truth is the vast majority of Israelis are unified.
So do you believe when this next political cycle comes up that it sounds like you're hopeful, very hopeful about the fact that like what's going to come out of it is going to be positive?
We have to see. There are new players who are coming into politics in Israel, very interesting people who will sort of create new parties based around different ideals and ideas and attempt to pull. Like what polling now in Israel, if you're looking at polling from either side, all that we're having is a continuation of what we had prior, which is that we'd end up in a round circuit of election after election after election after election. Like no one's winning. So you're going to have new parties step forward with new people who I believe will take a large section of the vote.
Yeah, talking about unity though, the government, you can't say the government is united. I mean, that to me is the most frustrating part with Gallant and Benny Gantz. I mean, they're playing fucking politics. It definitely seems like. I mean, unless things are not happening.
Yeah,
there.
everyone's consistently in the back rooms.
No,
backstabbing.
Gallant is busy
Yeah.
going behind his back. Gantz is leaving the work. What's your take on that?
Politics. They're just simply playing politics.
We don't have time for politics, Achi, right now. What does that mean?
We look, again, on one hand, it's true we don't. The truth is that this government isn't going to fall. It isn't going to fall.
Right.
And the reason why it won't is because politicians are well aware of the fact that if there's elections now, they're all going to lose their jobs. So this government stands strong, I think, at least for another year, if not longer.
Oh, really?
Oh, you really believe that?
Benny Gantz pulling out didn't really make any difference at all, right? This was, again, kind of a push, I believe, a lot connected to Benny Gantz and his connection to the United States and Blinken and this kind of connection and pull to show this strength and this connection between the Democrat Party and again, the center left of Israel,
Right.
Which is a dangerous move. It's a very, very dangerous move. But Benny Gantz has made multiple mistakes. I believe this being one of them. I don't think he should have pulled out a unity government. I don't see how this helps him at all. But it doesn't make any difference in terms of directive, in terms of how the army works. It makes no difference at all. If we see a war in Lebanon over the next month or 2 months, it won't make a difference who's in the war cabinet or not, right? It just, the prime minister is effectively the person making the major decisions, along with the chief of staff and people in the army. And, we have to see how that plays out. There are those who are worried that Netanyahu's going to schlep out the war,
Right.
because it helps his political career.
So
Do you think he's schlepping it out for Trump to see what happens in November? That's what I've been thinking for the last 3 months.
Look, I don't think it's schlepping out at all, to be honest with you. The movement inside of Gaza is much, much quicker than we've even begun to imagine, and none of us thought it would be this quick. You're looking at Rafah now, where we're pretty much done, right? Maybe another month, and the war will start to change in terms of how
we
we do
walk
this.
out of Rafah right now, or out of Gaza, I should say right now, I don't see, I'm not saying we didn't damage a lot of infrastructure, but I don't see how Hamas is still very much an entity.
Hamas will always be an entity.
it's like pulling out of
So then where's the win?
Afghanistan with the Taliban.
So, if we were to step out of Gaza right now, October 7th couldn't happen again. That's number one. We've damaged them and hurt them significantly enough that they couldn't do that
Can't
again.
happen again. That's a strong statement.
Within
Okay,
the
yeah,
next X amount of time, unless they were able to rebuild.
But from a world view, that's a loss, I think. If the name Hamas exists, I don't see how it's not a loss.
The name Hamas will always exist because we also have to understand who we're dealing with, right? You're dealing with, it's not like a political, it's an ideology, right?
Okay, so maybe it'll be Chol Chumas the next day, but at least the name Hamas doesn't exist. They toppled the regime.
The name Hamas will go nowhere. It will get the same way Al Qaeda exists after Bin Laden, right? That name didn't go anywhere either. This name will always exist. We also have to change how we view a victory here, right? And this is also part of it, because the truth is, even when we were dealing with the beginning of the war, we were talking about potentially 30,000 terrorists, right? 30,000 active members of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other such groups. All of these 300,000 men have families. Each one has maybe, if we take a low average of 5 kids, right? That's a lot of bloody terrorists coming next, right? In 10 to 15 years' time. The day after, in terms of how we deal with this moving forward, it isn't just eliminating Hamas leadership and Hamas movements and their places of creating weaponry, which we've done. Hamas is weakened now to a very, very significant point. It would take them years to rebuild it. If we were to just pull out of Gaza stupidly like we did last time and say, go, right? It's going to take them another 10 years to rebuild what we've damaged, right, in the last 8 months. So that's why, on one hand, there is a victory if we leave now. However, the war, and you're not going to kill all of them. It doesn't work like that. Unfortunately,
you have to. Why can't? Fine, maybe the name Hamas will always be around, but why can't a victory mean toppling the government, putting in another government? Like, I don't see how that's not a victory. That's what I mean when I say toppling Hamas.
Absolutely, but if you're looking at victory, right, from that perspective, you're looking at, for example, taking out Sinwar, right, who's inside of Gaza, and Ismail Haniyeh, who's traveling all around 100%. The world. All of these people are dead men walking and will be killed when time is deemed to kill them, right? So the ones who are in Qatar at the moment, for example, their time really is limited.
I don't understand why they haven't gone. I don't understand. I don't know anything. But
the reason why we haven't taken out those kind of leadership.
The motherfucker's in Doha. Go. We know where he is.
Go into Qatar.
No, there's no question. Qatar, he's been traveling to Turkey. There have been many opportunities for us to take him out. The implications of that would be too big right now. And also in the middle of a potential deal. We can't forget that there are hostages, 120 people still being held inside of Gaza, right? This plays the big part in terms of how we deal with this situation. Sinwar almost definitely is going to be surrounding himself with hostages, living hostages, and will be holding them until the very last minute as some kind of get out of jail free card. And in that kind of situation, what does Israel do, right? Now, you obviously make the deal. Sinwar gets out of jail free, gets to go to Doha
No, you
and travel the world.
I disagree. I mean, that's your opinion.
And you let him,
I
you
don't
let him
agree
kill the
with that.
hostages. You let him kill the
this
hostages.
is-
You don't. Yeah, you try your best not for them not to die, but he does not get it. Yeah, you do not let him get out.
So
You don't deliberately kill them. Like
No,
it's like any raid. You walk in and you try to freaking
it doesn't work
kill
like
the
that.
guy, and
the
people
guy,
that die in
the
it.
guy's inside of a. Let's just take the theoretical, which is a likely scenario that is deep inside of a tunnel, and a huge tunnel structure and system, surrounded with a huge amount of terrorists, surrounded with a huge amount of hostages. Right? If the IDF enters, all the hostages die. There isn't any question.
You take okay. I mean, if you're putting me in that exact
Which
scenario,
is basically the scenario.
you try your best. I mean, I hear it. Listen, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds, but you do everything you can to try. If there's a 0.1% chance you could kill him and get them out alive, 0.1. That means there's a 99.99% chance they do die. You take that. My opinion. This is just me.
right.
That's what I would say. You can't.
It's
Every
it's
single
a
time we
valid-
make a deal for the hostages, it's terrible. It's freaking terrible, and it allows them to do it again. It's the same idea of why you can't, like, this whole idea that they get to go into civilian populations and we're too scared and the world sits there screaming, that we're killing civilians. If we're not able to go after them, it's a perfect way for them to continue committing terrorism. People only stop doing. It's like anything. People only stop doing something when they realize that method is not a successful method. So long as a method is successful, it's going to keep on happening. So I don't
Right.
understand.
So, hold on.
Yeah.
There's 2 points to this, right?
Yeah.
The first point regarding a kind of a deal to release the hostages. What you're saying is what a lot of people are saying, right? The flip side of that is obviously their families, and these are people, and they're living people, and we have to do everything to bring them out alive. And that 99.9% risk is something that is potentially easier to say from here. But imagine, God forbid, that was your family inside. You'd be
Okay,
talking
so let's go
about the
back
opposite
now
way.
22 years. Hold on.
Okay.
We released a guy by the name of Yahya Sinwar,
Right.
one of 1,027 terrorists. For how many soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
One. And what happened freaking 10 years later?
Right.
We just got 1,200 people killed in a nation that's scarred for the next 100 plus years, probably more, forever, really. How could we turn around right now and have this conversation? To me, it's not a conversation.
Again, I understand what you're saying.
Sorry, I'm being passionate. I'm
no,
just,
no,
it's
no,
so
no, no.
obvious.
One
No.
is-
It's fine. Like, and it's
we released the guy that's
But,
did
no,
it.
but
one
these are
is-
conversations that are happening inside of Israel, right? These are the conversations that are happening inside of the cabinet, right? And truly they are. There are people who think exactly like you do, and there are people who think the exact opposite way as well. And there isn't a perfect answer because this is a horrible, horrible situation. But I think the bigger point that you made was also about the issue of civilian casualties and the world watching and all of this stuff. And I think one thing that we really need to understand, perhaps more than anything, and truly understand this, there's a reason why we've survived as Jews longer than anybody else. And that reason really falls down to who we are as a people, to our morality, to our decency, and to our strength as true bastions of humanity. Jews don't hate, right? When you hate, you don't create anything. You destroy. Jews have always built. And that comes from our decency and our morality. Our soldiers all need to come home at night to their parents, to their wives, to their husbands, however they're coming back, and be able to stand tall and proud. And
Feel
we
good,
as a
yeah.
people need to be able to stand tall and proud. We don't do that when we kill innocent people. We do that when we take every possible effort, and this is what we're doing. And this is another reason why we have to be so proud of the IDF. No other army in the entire world. This war has had less civilian casualties than any other war in modern history. Any other war in modern history. And people love bashing on the IDF and all this stuff, but as Jews, we should be so proud, like so incredibly proud. And this humanity and decency and morality is really what keeps us. And this is what makes us so unique as Jews. We don't act like they do. We never have, and we never will.
Of course not, but maybe, yeah, go ahead, Shmueli.
No, I'm going to combat your
Yeah,
point.
please.
Is that you're basically saying that the way that terrorists work is that they know that if we hold this hostage, we hold these people around us, then we know that Israel is not going to do X, Y, and Z, which they need to do in order to win this war. In order to
They go
win
by available methods.
They go by, and one of the available methods is surrounding our top people with hostages and things of that nature. What you're basically saying is that we have to play the terrorists at their own game and decide for ourselves that, it's more important that we get Sinwar and have those people be martyrs. in a sense.
So I said, okay, so there's, okay, the question is, first of all, what's a martyr? I don't think that would be considered a martyr. That's first of all. Second of all, I said already, if it's 100% and it's a guarantee that they would die, then it's its own question. I mean,
nothing
I'm
in
not
life,
one to be done. I'm saying
nothing in life's ever going to be an 100% guarantee. So you're always dealing with
correct.
the 99.99 or 99.98, 99.97. So like, at what point do you make the distinction?
I think if there's any availability, you make your effort. And unfortunately, this is a terrible situation and terrible things happen. But so long as people know that they can continue doing this, and terrorists know there's the line that says you do not negotiate with terrorists. Where does that line come from? From exactly what I'm saying. So when you do negotiate with terrorists, what happens? You have October 7th happen because we negotiated with them 12 years ago, and we keep on negotiating with them. Honestly, like a bunch of idiots, in my opinion. It's just utter stupidity. So to me, no. Like, you think America would be freaking negotiating with these clowns if they were in this position? They'd walk in there, would be Dresden. They'd literally carpet bomb the place. Done. That's what they would do.
The combatant to that is exactly what he's saying, which is the morality of our army in that sense, and the surgicalness that we go about things, that we don't just carpet bomb, and we don't just do those things, is something that we should take pride in.
Okay, so I was going to say, well, he was also not just that. He was also, to make his point stronger, by the way, which your point was that even with Palestinian civilians, which, right, you're saying with Israeli civilians, that's for sure.
I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm just saying the concept of killing Sinwar in order to
but I would say
have 120 people killed.
I would just say, who says that what you're claiming to be morality is morality? You're claiming that taking the high road of I'm not saying to obviously just deliberately kill civilians.
Right.
I'm not a psychopath, but you're saying that go to the next nth degree that's taking us months and months, more time, and possibly a year more time, and very likely could be keeping Hamas around forever, while the world gets more and more upset because they like to hate Jews more and more as they keep seeing things on their screen. You're telling me that there's some morality in that. When I can make an argument, there's no morality in that. You think that's morality. That's actually making a huge mistake as far as being...
I'm not saying that the war should be pulled out longer than it is based off an idea of, morality or whatever.
No, but that's happening. That's definitive that's going to happen. We're taking high measures.
No. Yes and no, right? Yes and no. It's not that we're not... if there's a terrorist and, for example, there's a family around him, we will pull out and wait and get him the next time, right? And so, yes, could it extend it by a day or two? Potentially. We're not talking about a situation where we're extending this by years based on a moral high ground. And, if we're getting all sort of frum on this as well, then, look at the issue of Amalek, right? And we're talking about the fact that it's not just...
I was thinking this earlier.
But you're thinking about this idea of, look, from biblical terms, the moral high ground would have been...
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Right. And so
there's a famous story also, by the way, where the actual halacha is, by the way.
I know.
Everyone.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the actual halacha is you never make a deal with the terrorists because as long they're going to do it again.
Right. So okay, fine. Again, all of this is well and good, but there are many, many, many layers to this as well. We do still need international support in Israel. We do have to play an international game, right? And all of this plays into that.
Isn't that a game that is ultimately always going to be losing?
No.
It's a PR game that... Has Israel ever won the PR game, and are they ever going to win the PR game?
Before.
No, but look, even when we look at the international level of Israel's understanding, so for example, the perfect example is the recent peace or hostage ceasefire negotiations that fell through, right? Effectively, what we did in Israel, effectively what Netanyahu did was called their bluff. Biden gave his speech on Shabbos in Israel, right? So to the people of Israel, it spoke on Friday night, half of Israel couldn't watch the thing, right? So Biden gave his speech, Motzei Shabbos comes around, and Netanyahu says, okay then, go on.
Why? Because they wouldn't do a deal, you think?
Go on.
Is that why he spoke? What do you mean when you say he spoke on Shabbos?
Biden spoke on Friday night to the people of Israel, basically saying, you have to accept this deal. This is the last chance to get the hostages out, to have a ceasefire, to create peace, and put all this pressure on Israel. And Israel, Netanyahu turned around and said, okay then, you have a deal, go. Get them to agree. Right? The problem was never us.
Right.
We knew this from the beginning. You attempt to make a deal with the devil. The only way there'll ever be a hostage deal, the only reason why there was one in the first place was because of immense military pressure and Hamas's perspective that maybe this would help end the war, right? Or Israel wouldn't come back and enter as hard as they did prior to it. So what we see, especially today, is that we know this for a fact, that the only way there'll be a hostage deal is really when the boots of the IDF soldiers are felt at Sinwar's neck. At that point, there may be a deal made.
My point is, I don't even think that necessarily a deal will be made. I think he'll just go down with the ship, try to kill. That's what we're saying. But anyways,
Or attempt to slip it out a little bit longer.
okay, I got you. Yeah, whatever. It's just, again, we're probably talking with limited information. I always think about that, but it's still like, I just think about if we're working within the parameters of what I'm saying in the media. Which,
No, and look, most of what you're seeing and most of what you're saying is entirely correct.
So my question would be, it's very straightforward. How do you feel overall Bibi's handled the situation?
To be honest, I don't see there'd be a huge difference in terms of who the prime minister was in terms of how the situation was dealt with. There aren't many ways that this goes about, right? Basically, you enter war with Hamas, you get the hostages back, and you kill the bad guys. It's what Israel's done. There's a tremendous amount of juggling that goes on between that, right? You have immense pressure from the United States.
You think
Right,
other
he
people
hasn't
will be able to
caved,
you
though.
think other
That's like
people will be able-
something-
Right. You think other people will be able to handle that pressure?
I think, if anything, that Israel is somewhat lucky that Netanyahu is the prime minister now, because he has the understanding of how to deal with American pressure, whereas others would buckle. Benny Gantz, if was the prime minister, would be an absolute nightmare. Lapid, forget about it. Even Naftali Bennett, all of these people would have buckled and not necessarily
You think
understood.
Bennett would?
But Bennett flip-flops.
Right.
I wouldn't trust him with anything. But in terms of how we deal, and in terms of how Netanyahu's dealt with it, and especially from this American pressure, and again, I look, what we've seen coming from the White House and from the U.S. administration has, on one hand, there isn't a question that they've showed a tremendous support for Israel, but on the other hand, they're pushing a direction and a narrative that is quite simply not realistic.
Well, it's politically, from my perspective, Biden just needs the war to end under his guise, because if it ends under his under his administration, under his term, then he can go into the election cycle and say, look, we stopped the biggest war that's been happening since Russia-Ukraine or whatever it is.
Right, which no one's calling to stop.
Right.
Right,
Correct.
Russia-Ukrainians are carrying on killing each other.
Right.
That's fine. But you Jews.
Did you see what Trump said the other day? Did you see this?
No.
He's like Zelensky's the biggest con artist of all time. He's like every time the guy shows up to America, he walks away with $60 billion. He's like, how the fuck does this guy keep doing this?
No, and
he walks in and leaves a $60 bill.
And no one's talking about ending that war. And I mean, that war ends in a very, very easy way. I've been in Ukraine 6 times since the war
So
started.
dealing with more normal parties. I mean, Putin, but he's willing to do a deal so long as
he's not Hamas, right?
He's willing to do a deal.
And that deal ends exactly the same way. The Russia-Ukraine, I've been in Russia. I've been in Ukraine 6 times since the war started. I have many friends in Ukraine and many politicians I know very well, working with the Jewish Agency, taking a lot of people out, working with Holocaust survivors and righteous inside. And that war ends exactly the same way. There's not many playing cards, right? Ukraine promises not to enter NATO, rebuilds their army over an extended period of time. Russia keeps a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That's the war done.
Why are we?
But doesn't Russia want to take? I mean, call me an novice over. Don't they? Their end goal is to take over Ukraine.
But that's also not going to happen by this point, and they're aware.
And
of
they're
that.
aware of that.
And Putin
so you
gets it.
you think Putin's willing to concede?
He only
that?
really
He needs-
invaded. His reason for invading, tell me if I'm incorrect, and I'm asking you this, not
Right.
telling you this, is because they were threatening to join NATO, and Biden wouldn't definitively say that he's not.
Well, yes and no, and it was also there was a feeling of Zelensky's administration that was very weak, and he'd be able to topple
he
it and
also
put
thought that he just
in
wanted-
a more pro-Russia thing, and basically create a stronger pact. Like Putin is that this isn't. A lot of people have used this as some kind of bashing of Ukraine. The Ukrainians are fighting valiantly for their freedom, and this is something that we have to bear in mind. And the truth is, the world is keep propping them up and propping them up and propping them up instead of stopping this bloody war. And it is a war that actually could end, and should end.
So why are we not ending it? No good answer.
Probably because of the money that's being funneled through there,
Right,
and
defense
the weapons,
contractors and
defense
all that
contractors.
shit.
Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
So
why
many
this war-
layers to these things. People are just looking.
That's what I was saying.
And
right?
it doesn't make any other. Look, there's also an opinion
are
of
baking
weakening
on it.
Russia and weakening Russia and weakening Russia, but that's not really working, right? So we're ending up in a weird position today where this war's continuing. The whole world's focused on us fighting against terrorists.
So funny.
Right, where
Right.
Ukraine, like just last week, the Russians dropped a bomb on and blew up like a shopping mall, right, and took out everybody in there, and the news didn't even report it, and everyone just goes,
blink an eye.
and Israel rescues 4 hostages and kills a bunch of terrorists, and everyone goes, how terrible that all these terrorists were killed. Right?
Well, they're
Like,
upset that they killed civilians, which I'm just like, yeah.
But again, civilians is a
happens to
whole
be-
other thing.
It's a nice segue.
go ahead.
Is that into the European politics and your relationship in that area? you've built a vast amount of relationships. I was reading up actually for the podcast a little bit, and I saw that you had a close relationship, or you do, in Poland with the Polish Prime Minister, Polish President. Can you speak to that? And you have an effort that I think is called the Depths of
From
the Depths, an organization, and speak to those two things.
So, From the Depths is a foundation that I created 10 years ago, working mainly with Holocaust Memory and Memorial. That's a whole long other podcast. We'll leave that for another time.
Sure.
And in terms of what we do there, it's connected to the field of Holocaust Memory and Memorial. Now, the efforts and the focus obviously all took place where the Holocaust took place, right? So the German Nazis invaded Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Ukraine, all these places, and this is where the mass killings of Jews took place. So a lot of our work was focused in these countries and in these places. And as a result of such, whoever is in government, as someone who runs a foundation in these places, you're going to attempt to build strong and decent relations. And so inside of Poland, as a perfect example, I became pretty big in Polish media. I did a huge amount of media out there and got quite well known.
How did you land there? Some random place.
How do you get involved? Yeah.
Well, Poland's where all the death camps are
That's
built,
what you're saying.
right?
That's
So
right,
if you go to any death camp, you're going to be in Poland because that's where the Germans occupied and built most of the death camps. As well, the Jewish tours go and all the groups, and and so I started slowly doing more and more work there. It's all started with this idea in 2014 on the 27th of January, where my foundation was created with the main idea of bringing the Knesset, is the Israeli parliament, to Auschwitz, and we held a session of the Knesset in Auschwitz.
They never did that till then.
Never once in history. We took the majority of the Knesset outside of Israel to Auschwitz. Each member of Knesset went with a Holocaust survivor.
The reason was to show them, like, just
on one hand, to show the
Jewish
members of
pride,
Knesset, Jewish pride for the members of Knesset, also an understanding, and in addition for the survivors, a level of closure and connection. And it was a huge thing. There's international parliamentarian delegations.
Yeah. So when you say you brought half the Knesset, these people had never been there even personally, or
Correct.
they never went together?
Not everybody, but Naftali Bennett's a perfect example. He was the Minister of Education at the time. He'd never been to Poland.
Wow.
Right. So he was the
That's
Minister of
crazy
Education
to
and
me.
he'd never visited Auschwitz. Right. And so this was his first trip, was on my delegation. So we did this huge. Eric Cantor was the speaker at the time. So he had a bipartisan congressional delegation. They flew out with the U.S. Air Force, and he headed that up as another. He was a huge Jewish leader at the time here in America before he lost. But it was his first time as well, and this was a very important and significant day. And as a result of my age at the time, I was 27. There was a lot of media coverage and interest, and especially in Poland, and that kind of helped me. Create some kind of big, sort of media following in Poland. And actually, my book came out in Poland about 6 months ago. I have a best-selling book in Poland with a very famous Polish journalist. The book's called Everything You Wanted to Ask a Jew But Was Too Scared to Ask. And the book focuses obviously on all the myths and legends behind anti-Semitism. And basically says, look, I'm here, I'm open, we haven't got anything to hide, so ask me what you want to ask me, all your stupid questions and your hard ones, and let's go.
All right, everybody, want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Ice Shaker Incorporated. For those of you that have been following Mislaibeled, you know that we had Chris Gronkowski on. This is his company. They were on Shark Tank, offered a deal by all 5 sharks. They have sold over 1 million bottles to date. Kitchen grade stainless steel, which does not absorb odor like all plastic bottles do. If you are a workout junkie, this product is for you. Third-party tested, will hold ice for 30 plus hours and keep your drink cold. Additionally, this is customizable for all employers for their employees and can make for a great gift for a friend. Turnaround time on custom bottles is 3 to 5 business days. To reach out to them, you can hit them via email, info@iceshaker.com. That's info@iceshaker.com. Or reach them by phone, 817-329-6478. Again, that's 817-329-6478. A customer rep will direct you to the correct sales department. Now back to our episode. I also read that you brought Ray Allen.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm curious your opinion on Ray, because it seems like I assume know him a little bit.
Yep.
He's has tremendous disdain from what I followed to Israel. Yet he's very big on Holocaust.
The honest truth.
Stuff.
The honest truth.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's weird as hell, right? So Obama put Ray Allen on the Holocaust board. They played golf together. And I have no clue what he did that for. He put him on the Holocaust board, and Ray had never even been to a death camp, right? And didn't know much. So I reached out to his people and I said, let's have him come. I took him to Poland. We spent time visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau. We went to the homes where Jews were hidden during the war. We visited monasteries. I really wanted to show him an avenue. Actually, we do a lot of work with Righteous Amongst the Nations, non-Jews who save Jews. It's often easier for people to deal with when you stories of heroism, right? This is what I wanted to show Ray. And everything he'd post, even like a little story, he'd get a huge amount of backlash, right? What about black suffering?
Yeah.
Why are you talking about Jewish suffering? What about black suffering? And rather than double down or show any strength, he just backed off of it. And it's kind of been, I was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like, he's walking in Auschwitz with big ass headphones on, right? And I'm like, dude, take him off, right? Like, he's like, I'm just listening. I want to like be able to concentrate. I'm like, don't look good. Take him off, right? Like, you internalize. And he didn't. This is the honest truth. And so even when he came back, everyone was reaching out, all the Holocaust organizations. Oh, bring Ray Allen for an event, for dinner, for this, for that. He didn't do anything like that. And so, especially when it came to the Israel stuff, he actually stopped following me. We were following each other on social media because we were friendly and we'd talk every so often. And I'd continuously reach out to him, right? And it never went anywhere. And then after October 7th, when my content obviously became very, very strong and pro-Israel, like more so than beforehand, perhaps, the pro-Israel stuff could be viewed as just patriotic. After October 7th, it was used by him as some kind of militancy. And so Ray and I are no longer friends.
So just so I understand, you think it was basically a prop?
The PR prop is what
From
you
who?
think.
From him.
Yeah, Obama offered it to him.
But I'm saying no, like, was there
Going
any
to
sincerity
Poland?
towards
Initially, there was sincerity, right? Because it was a situation, look, dude, come, let's see it for yourself, right? And he was interested to a degree, but he didn't internalize anything.
Because he writes, I saw some posts, and it
he
seemed like
posted the post,
Yeah,
and it seemed like he
posted
was.
the point, he wrote in the Players Tribune and all this stuff.
it seemed like he was touched by it.
All right, so perhaps he was touched, but what's he understood from it?
Right.
Unfortunately, not very much. And this is just a bigger problem that we see across the board, is that it's not, even if he was touched and even if he felt it, the problem is someone like him, the backlash that he will get from showing anything that's remotely like Holocaust education is now seen as pro-Israel and pro-Jewish, right? So even that he's going to back away from. With friends like that.
Did it end? You say that you're not friends anymore. Was there a very clear discussion, or just he unfollowed you and that was it?
He very much started unfollow. Like, it was clear after a lot of the Israel content that suddenly he's not following me anymore, and
Right.
that's okay.
No, I understand. It was just an interesting. I was always curious about this particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, people in this space, they have no backbone. I don't know how much you know about Enos Cantor, but like, that's a person that actually has backbone. Like,
has he?
He has basically fought against the Turkish government and all that stuff, and he's very pro-Jews, and in general he does not back down. He lost his NBA contracts and he was 33 years old. Yeah, sure. He didn't. No one's going to sign him in the NBA anymore because of that.
Yeah.
What was? It seemed. First of all, what do you do from a financial component? Like, where's the?
How do I make money?
Yeah. How do you, from a financial space? How do you, like? You're doing PR consulting and different things. Is that the bulk of where there's money in the work you're doing now?
What, from a perspective of the foundation, I work from the foundation. I don't take any money,
Right.
so I've never pulled a salary from that, and I make money from my PR work, and I work with different companies, and in addition to that, I get paid for speaking engagements as well.
Got it. So something happened. Like, I feel like post October 7th is when you really blew up to the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
What specifically were you doing, if anything, that made that happen?
I think, bless you.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, says you're telling the truth, eh? That's what they say, right?
Is that how it
yeah,
goes?
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that. It's such an English thing to say, by the way.
I think they might even be Polish, to be honest. But there you go.
Oh,
You
really?
got it. Whatever.
My
it is.
mom is English, so
Yeah.
she actually never told that to me. So
So maybe it's Polish then.
Okay.
Look, what happened was I started using the platform that I'd already built and a good name that I built for myself, and basically started to tell the truth in a way that was digestible to a lot of people. We've spoken about today the issue of this media, right? This 24-hour media cycle and this mass noise that you hear constantly from the press. And this is a huge problem. It's noise and noise and noise. And within that, there's not much truth. And if there is truth, it's scattered. And so effectively, I use my platform basically simply to tell the truth. and the truth is the truth, whether we like it. There's no ways of sugarcoating it. And also, I think that there's a potential voice of calm as well. That I truly don't view this as 1939. I truly don't view this as the end of everything.
Who's having this conversation?
I don't,
So recently.
people believe it, and
I'm with you on that.
easy, right? We will be okay, right? There isn't any question that Israel wins this war. There isn't any question. There isn't any question that the Jewish people get through this. There isn't any question that we come out of it stronger. Everything is going to be absolutely okay. Now, a lot of social media and a lot of personalities on social media are constantly pushing some kind of sensationalized version of everything. And all it does is trigger everybody and work everybody up. And so at least for me, I'm not putting anything on. My voice is a calming voice, and I think that's what drew people to
Do you
me.
think outside of Israel, the rise of anti-Semitism is going to calm down? Do you believe that? Do you think it's sensationalism now? Do you think it's just something that is of just heightened just of the recent things that's been going on?
So there's a few points. So the first thing is there is a genie that was let out of the bottle, and that genie doesn't get pushed back in the bottle. The anti-Semitic talk and rhetoric doesn't suddenly disappear. So that is with us for a long time. There's nothing we can do about it. However, the mass craziness that we see on the streets will dissipate. There isn't any question of that.
Yeah,
it will dissipate.
It's going to dissipate when the war ends. My only question really is, though, I'm thinking about it now. I've been thinking about this for the last week. Israel's getting very close to going into Lebanon. Like, their hand is basically being forced. I feel like the world is going to fucking implode the minute they go into Lebanon. Obviously, Hezbollah kind
It's
of like...
basically a secondary war happening.
Yeah, I'm saying Hezbollah could walk into Israel and the world would still have absolute chaos if Israel declared war. So long as if Israel goes in right now, I don't see how that's not gonna.
There's a difference. First of all, the pictures that we're going to get are going to be different, right? A war with Lebanon will be, if we're looking just from a media perspective and how a war would be viewed with Lebanon, what you'll see with a war with Lebanon is much more of a war against soldiers and against an army.
Right.
So from that perspective,
I've said this
it's a little easier for people to maybe understand. It's like we're fighting an army.
So there's uniforms. And
There's uniforms.
I've said this with you, like Hamas is a militia type of thing,
Right,
and when
and
you're
they're
dealing
hiding
with
amongst
Hezbollah, you
people.
feel like you're dealing with an army.
The problem is that they're also not stupid, and they get the game as well, right? The Hezbollah fighters are not just on the Lebanese border; they're spread out. They're everywhere. There isn't any question that all of southern Lebanon gets flattened. Beirut will also get hit, right? So if Israel has no other option but to go to war with Lebanon, it's going to be very, very brutal and very, very difficult. A lot of countries are going to be very, very pissed at us, right? There isn't any question of that. There will be mass riots through streets.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
What are you going to do?
no, I'm for it.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, I'm just thinking in my head what it's going to look like
well,
after
the
8
question-
months in Gaza.
Question is,
now
what's
there's
the
a second
backlash
front.
going to be on that?
It would almost be good if we would have done it at the same time.
Right. I mean, well, we couldn't, right? And
Yeah.
we wouldn't, but the backlash will be bad. The backlash will be very, very bad.
But you just better hope Trump wins. That's the honest truth. That's really the hope. If Trump wins, this becomes, in my opinion, way easier.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Honestly,
Come on.
if we're speaking 100% honestly, like truly, look, now, I avoid talking about American politics because I'm not American and because it pisses everybody off from one way or another. But my honest concern with Trump being reelected, look, there's no question that he was brilliant for Israel in his first term. No question. Better than anybody in history. Unbelievable. Truly amazing. But he also had a second term to win and an evangelical vote to pull and a group of people to bring with him. Trump is a fickle human being. We know this. All of us know this. He's pissed off with Bibi. He's said it. He's talked about wrapping up the war. He's talked about all these things. Does Trump come back in and give Israel full reign to do what we need to do? Or does he say, you all need to stop, wrap it up? Right?
I think
Does
when
he
Trump
try and
says
force
wrap
us?
it up, he means flatten the place and get shit done. Like, that's what do I know? I'm just saying.
No, but
based on like understanding, he's a he
based on
sees it as a child. Like literally, you said what your daughter said. It's the same thing. He's like, these are terrorists.
Yes and no, but based on understanding Trump, we also understand that he's fickle, right? And there are things that he's done that's problematic, right? Sitting with people like Nick Fuentes, right? Meeting with Holocaust deniers. These are things that shouldn't have happened. And this is, do we have a perfect scenario where it's either a Trump or Biden and wonderful, one of them will be great for Israel? I don't think we do. Could Trump be better than Biden is right now? But also, look, Biden wins the election. He's not worried about Dearborn again, right? He's not worried about a Muslim vote and all of this stuff. So will he get better and more lax with Israel? And in all fairness, he's not been that bad, right? Has he stopped armaments? Yes. Did they do certain things? Yes.
No, but all the bullshit. What do you mean?
pushing.
He's not in the last 6 months. He's not back, and then whatever. I mean,
No, but the point is that it's not as clear cut as Donald Trump comes in, Israel wins, right? There's a risk with someone like Trump, whether we like it or not.
I hear why you feel. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not
I
saying
think
there's
that
not
would
validity in the words you're saying. I'm not as worried
Okay,
about
no,
it.
but in all honesty, look, if you were to poll Israelis right now, and like anyone in Israel, do like a mass poll in Israel, like 90% of Israelis would say Donald Trump.
Right.
We'd vote for Donald Trump because most Israelis believe how you believe, right? I'm just saying that there is still, and we still have to be wary with
We
someone.
always
like
have to be wary with someone like him.
Yeah,
in
because
general-
who knows what he's going to do,
Right.
Right? That's Trump.
Right.
Yeah, I hear. I mean, to me, I just see him. He's a politician. He met with Kim Jong Un. He'll meet with anyone. Like him meeting with Nick Fuentes to me doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know.
I know it bothered me a lot.
I hear why it would bother a Jewish person. Don't get me wrong, but I also hear why he's willing to sit with anyone. He plays his cards, all of them.
Right.
He'll like. Also, Nick Fuentes is very pro his base, so he still needs the votes. So from his end, it doesn't mean now I'm going to listen to Nick Fuentes. He's probably thinking, get the fuck out of here. This guy's a white supremacist asshole. But
I'm
keep
about
him
to
happy.
get. But I'm about to get 1.5 million votes.
I'll keep him
because-
happy. Exactly. I'll keep him happy. Like I'll give him the 25 minutes. That type of thing. But again, you're right. There is no way to know. I totally I hear what you're saying. On that front.
You started off your career really, being obviously that story, you in the car and getting that chief of staff, whatever. Do you have any aspirations now to get into the Knesset, to get into Parliament, and to really from not just a PR standpoint, but from an actuality standpoint, get into that politic game?
Should I give you the real answer
Yes.
or the political answer?
No, the real answer.
Maybe. Again, I flow. I see what happens. I don't plan anything. We'll see how it goes.
And one other question is, you have obviously,
I have been asked. I've been asked.
You also have children, and
Yeah.
that is obviously that plays a major factor.
Yeah.
And how is that? How is your I guess fame that you've created since October 7th, and a lot of, obviously it's been controversial. There are people that love you. There are people that are not the biggest fans, and it's just the way it is about everyone.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with this podcast, right? And just
Definitely
that's who it
about
is.
me.
Whenever you have
Do you know anything about our bod?
Yeah, of course.
You do actually.
Yeah.
when you have a strong opinion about anything, you're gonna have both sides.
You're being sarcastic. You're saying.
I know. I do know. Of course, I know
No,
about
I'm
your
talking about
podcast.
when you said no. Like,
Yeah, well, no, that's why I was being sarcastic.
No,
That's
so
right,
when
right,
it
of
comes
course.
to your children, how is there been a toll on that as well?
No, look, I mean, my kids live in Israel, right? It's the fact that I'm pro-Israel, right?
Right.
And in all honesty, it's nothing that I'm. I haven't really received backlash, in all fairness, because, and if I do receive backlash, it's from pro-Palestinians, and to be honest, they can go fuck themselves, right? Couldn't care less. The stuff I've received a lot of love. And my kids see that they're quite confused by it. To be honest, they think it's quite funny. We were sitting.
Who loves that?
No, we were sitting in a restaurant,
loves Alba.
and like my back was to the restaurant, and so suddenly these people are like, oh, Jonny Daniels, we heard your voice. We had to come and get a selfie. And my daughters are like, oh, and afterwards they're like, Jonny Daniels, they found that very funny. And they're
Shmueli
like,
loves your name, by the way.
yeah.
Huge fan.
They're like, who pays to hear you speak? They're like, who's gonna pay to listen to you, Dad? I'm
By
like,
the way, it's not a joke. We get this on the podcast all the time. It's like we have friends, and it's like, who sits there and watches Laibel and Shmueli talk, and then we'll go into restaurants, and now we get selfies and stuff. And honestly, it's the craziest thing ever.
Right.
It's the craziest thing ever. I'll never get used to it.
It's gotten to a weird space.
It's gotten to a weird space, and we'll go around with people, and they're just rolling their eyes. They're like,
Can we just say
"Do
what
you
happened?
even know what this guy
Past
is?"
week, we were in LA. We shot some good guests, and I walked up pizza shop Saturday night. Shmueli was there already with a friend, and someone the second I walk in, I was running late, so I was 10 minutes. I come in 10 minutes after him. I walk up to his table, and someone comes running in. Laibel, can I get a selfie with you? Person takes a selfie and bounces. Shmueli's like, what the fuck? This person didn't even recognize me. Just totally
I got wrapped up, and I was like, I'm pissed.
Bro,
What the heck?
For the
I'm
next,
right here.
For the next
I
20
was with Elon Gold just down in the museum, and some lady was like, "Oh my God, Jonny Daniels!" And Elon was like, "Hmm?" Yeah, I was like, "He's more famous than me," and she was like,
Yeah, for the next 24 hours, he was so pissed.
I was like, this is ridiculous.
How did she not recognize
How did
me?
you not recognize me? I'm right here.
No, there's a fun thing. So I was in LA and I was in Beverly Hills, sitting in a restaurant as well, like a very famous joint, like when all the celebrities go.
Okay.
And so I was just sitting there and we finished dinner and I get up to walk out and some lady goes, oh, like lets up this massive gasp and like points. And I turned around. I'm like, sure. She's like, no, you. And I'm like, huh? And she's like, oh my God. She's like, you've brought me so much calm and peace and thank you. And she's crying and shaking. She's like, can we have a selfie? I take this selfie. Everyone in the restaurant was like, who the hell is that? Who's that guy?
Yeah.
Because they said like a celebrity is like, wait, who's that guy?
It's like a niche of people that know our certain area.
It's a nice Jew group of people.
It's like a nice Jew group and it's a niche amount of people. And
it's beautiful.
No one else. Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Everyone's
nice.
like, what? Who the
Who is that? Who is that guy? Who is that guy? But
Let me ask you.
It's good for the kids though, and you know what? It shows also children that they can grow up and do whatever they want to do. And even if you're not the smartest people like the three of us, we can still make it and do it, right?
Yeah.
So, that's for sure. That's for sure.
And that's an important thing as well, that truly anyone can do what they want to do. And that's always how I brought up my kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so they enjoy it.
A couple quick things before we wrap, because I do have to hit this meeting. We're all
I've got to run
we're
back
all
to the city
busy
as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. So my roommate actually just came back. He was there for 4 months.
Wow.
I was reserved, and he was telling me that like most of the reports about like the country being very upset with Netanyahu and not Netanyahu's done his political career. He's like, it's total BS. If he starts again, he's gonna win again. If elections are right now, he'd win again. You think that's true?
To a degree, like I spoke about this touch a bit before. Is again, look, Israel's basically the same as it was beforehand. We kind of got back to that point where the people who like Netanyahu like him, the people who don't. There'll be a lot of stuff that comes out when more and more information comes out about how this happened and the way behind this on October 7th.
I just saw a report they knew it was happening or not knew that they
listen. The night before October 7th, October 6th, 1,000 Israeli SIM cards were activated inside of Gaza. The only reason you activate a SIM card, an Israeli SIM card inside of Gaza, is to bring it into Israel. The reason why you do that is so you don't get followed, right? So if you're walking around with a Palestinian SIM card, you can track it much easier. 1,000 SIM cards were activated on the 6th in the evening. It's the biggest red flag in the world. It was ignored. All of our female soldiers on the border, ignored. There's many problems and many issues.
Do you have any conspiracy beliefs surrounding things?
Not really, no.
That's a dangerous question to ask you with your political future.
Yeah, so no, I don't. I think that, and I tell people this often, I think you've both been to Israel.
Of
Yes,
course.
Right.
We were there. We were there October 7th.
Oh wow.
We were there for Sukkot for the entire thing, and we were in Yerushalayim.
So you know Israelis as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So this won't surprise you, right? When I tell you that, sometimes Israelis can be a little bit arrogant. Mm-hmm. Right?
I would think, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Surprises the hell out
it's
of me.
shocking, right? So part of this arrogance, more than anything else, is what led us up to October 7th, was this idea of,
no one can fuck with us. Yeah.
They're not going to do it. What are they going to do? It's not going to be serious. Even if they try, we'll stop it. Right? And that's more than anything what led to October 7th.
Yeah.
We do a quick fire round with questions and just knock them out.
Yeah, are you part of the Mossad? Because I've read places that people think you are.
If I told you.
Yeah, you wouldn't be part of the Mossad, you're saying.
Exactly. And if I denied it.
Then that would be classic, so we'll never know what you're saying.
There you go.
There's no way to
We'll
know.
keep it as a mystery.
All right.
What's in terms of Poland? I saw there was a lot of backlash of when you were cozying up to the prime minister over there. Like, what truth is there to that? That like there was a lot of Polish Jews that were upset with you or this?
Yeah, look, a very long story short, you're always going to get backlash, whatever you do politically, right? That's also not news to anybody here. I worked with the left-wing government prior to the right-wing government coming in, and I now work with the left-wing government when the right-wing government got kicked out. My aim is not internal Polish politics. My aim is a continuous support of Israel and a continuous support of Jewish heritage and history. So yes, I had good relationships with the Polish government, and why not? Again, my aim isn't internal Polish politics. I couldn't care less, right, about anything that goes on inside of Poland. That's not my fight. I don't care about the taxes in Poland. I don't care about anything. I care that they continue to support Israel.
Are you close with Danny Dannon?
Yeah.
Currently?
Yeah.
Got it. No, I when you got to know him again, how long ago?
15 years ago.
Got it. What are your current thoughts on how Israel should move forward in Gaza? Do you okay, better yet, do you think that they need to stay there for keep a military presence for the next, I don't know, many years.
I think we're going to end up in a situation kind of similar to how we are in Judea and Samaria, where soldiers come in and out when necessary. I think it would be the biggest mistake to pull out entirely. There 100% needs to be military presence.
You think they need to go into the north?
Yes.
You do. How soon?
I think within a month or two we would have done it.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Jonny, first of all, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yes.
You're as cool as I was told, by the way. So bravo.
First of all, British. We went through this already when we had Henry on. British people, just in general, just the way you guys talk. You guys can literally come in sweatpants and whatever. The second you open your mouth, all of a sudden you guys are saying something genius.
But I also,
It's just the way it is. Like Americans, just in general, we sound stupid. And then you have.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, and
I
it's
agree, I
just the
agree.
way it is. And as you move farther west in America, you get stupider and stupider. You Colorado, everyone's high.
start
in
stupid,
LA,
you're-
you're like in the valley, someone's stupider. You just get west and west.
Yeah.
It's the way it
You
is.
end up in the sea, basically.
Right,
eh?
and then if
Yep.
you go to the east, they sound stupid too. Because forget about it in Brooklyn. You guys come in here. Literally, you guys could be naked on the street and you could be homeless. If you guys were speaking and said you guys needed $1,
The proper.
and you said I need a proper $1,
Yeah.
you guys would be
Well,
millionaires.
no, I think that's part of my charm, perhaps.
Your allure.
Is my accent, and it definitely works. It makes me sound
Yeah.
a lot smarter than I am. That's
Yes.
for sure. Just don't tell anybody that. Okay.
look.
The actual
British
truth is,
people have tremendous personality. Also,
Yes.
the truth is, I'm from Brooklyn, and I put on this accent to make myself sound smart. Don't tell anybody.
Could you imagine, by the way, there's someone like
That'd
that?
be
No,
amazing.
you know, someone said to me,
Was he able to roll a
someone
good
asked me on my
British
Q&As online, someone said to me, you know, where are you from, right? And I wrote Brooklyn, and people are like, what, really? I was like,
This is why he's the Mossad ass.
it's amazing.
Really,
Yeah,
he's a Brooklyn
exactly.
guy, and people think he came
Hey,
from.
well, I think the next move for this I think we have to learn a British accent.
100%.
good luck on that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Good
we'll
luck
get
on
some more views. 100%.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Jonny, thank you so much. Can we plug you? What's your Insta?
At Johnny Daniels.
At Johnny
Johnny
Daniels.
Daniels.
But the proper spelling, Jonny.
Oh,
J-O-N-N-Y.
no H.
No H,
J-O-N-N-Y
none of those.
Daniels. Anything else you want to plug? Your book?
No, it's in Polish. Have any Polish readers out here
Yeah,
can
no,
read
I
that.
got no
There you
Polish
go.
readers
The
out.
book in English will be out soon, and we'll push that later.
Okay,
but
fantastic.
definitely follow on Instagram, see updates, and
Yeah.
and
sure.
also for all of my followers who are watching this for the first time as well, check out your other stuff because it is pretty good. I've seen a lot of
that's
it.
what I think.
Appreciate
And
that.
No,
Appreciate
truly,
that.
it's enjoyable and quite fun. Even though
Appreciate
you
it.
do talk a lot.
Yeah, no. Yeah, 100%.
No, I'm kidding. It's enjoyable. I really had a good time all the way. It
Appreciate it.
Took me a long time to get here.
Yes,
but
we
well
appreciate the
worth
ride in
it.
and-
well worth it.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it. I
much.
really enjoyed this conversation. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Be back next week with another great episode. Peace.